Hi guys, Tom Hunt here in the kit room, and today we're going to do my top 3 pike baits for the month of May. So let's get into it. My first one at this time of year, every time I think of spring, coming out of that post-spawn period, April into May, there's only one bait I think of, and it's going to be the Westin Swim. The pike are up shallow. This is a shallow bait. It's just this time of year. There's something about this time of year and the Westin Swim that are strawberries and cream. They just go together absolutely perfectly. You will catch on this bait in the dead of winter. You will catch on later on, sort of early summer, autumn time. But for me, the Swim is an out and out springtime bait. We do it in the few sizes that I'm going to recommend. If you're really into like some sort of small pike, maybe on your canals, that type of stuff, we've got the new 8cm, which is a little dinky one, 16 grams. Absolutely love that one in the suspending version. 10cm, I've always said the 10cm can get me a bite from a 2-pounder or a 20-pounder. In a competition scenario, the 10 is what I tend to put on a lot of the time if I'm just scoping out, if I want to bite, just try and get some sort of reaction. Our best seller, hands down, is the 12. So if you're only going to get one, I probably would recommend the 10 or most probably the 12 for your proper pike fishing. Coming in, the sinking version there is like 58 to 62 grams. And I've actually got, you'll probably notice on the end there, I've got the silent version, which again is new out for 2024. No rattles, and is absolutely brilliant when those pike are just a little bit tricky or they're pressured. Your venue might see a lot of angling pressure. Something that's a little bit more quiet, something that's a little bit more subtle is absolutely ideal. And then going up to the 13.5cm that we launched last year, again, bit of a mouthful. We do one up to 15cm, but if I'm totally honest, unless you're out and out fishing for huge fish or you're in really wild places, maybe like Ireland, got those big wild waters, Scandinavia, those types of places, you can get away with fishing the big one. But for me, the 13.5 is probably the max size I'm going to go to in the UK. In terms of fishing them, get close to the bank. I don't tend to fish them. Total depth of water, I'm looking for no more than really about 12, 15-ish foot really. And I fish these between 2 foot and about 6 foot most of the time. The suspending version is absolutely brilliant. If you've got really skinny water, if you've got some weed come up and you've only got 18 inches or 2 foot of water over the top of the weed, or you're just fishing in really shallow water, 2 or 3 foot kind of round the edges in those bays, the suspending version is brilliant. It fishes that top foot to 18 inches absolutely brilliantly, and you can get that nice long glide and a nice pause, wait for them to come out and ambush it coming out of the weed. If you're fishing a little bit deeper, you could be anywhere from say 5 to say 15 foot deep, and those pike are roaming around, maybe they're hunting a few balls of bait fish, that type of stuff, I would normally fish the sinking version then. Casting it out, just give it a second just to get down a little bit. Fishing it on a straight wind gives you a lovely, like, mesmerizing S-shaped curve. Using either the reel or the rod tip, depending on your style, you can then put some jerking action into it and it can glide side to side as well. Put those pauses in. So yeah, the Westin Swim is just, in my opinion, the #1 springtime bait out there. However, if you've had a cold winter, if April is sluggishly dragging its way into May, which we are kind of having a little bit this year, a backup bait for me when the Swim is just not quite working is this. All right, this is the Westin jerkbait, the largest size, 13.5cm. Yeah, so most of you will know kind of perch style jerkbaits in this kind of shape. This is a little bit larger. We only do it in the shallow runner. I can still get it down to sort of 4 or 5 foot, but again, in that shallow, weedy-ish kind of area where the Westin Swim will work. If that's just a bit too much, or if you need a bait to really hang there, then this is the guy. I've been absolutely slaying. It's a little bit longer, a little bit slender, just a different shape. The Swim does have some bulk to it. So once you're getting into like the first few weeks of May, they're really going to start come up and smashing this. If you've got a sluggish sort of a back end of April, still got a few frosts, still a bit cold in the water, or you've got cold overnights and then warm days, or you've got lots of rainfall like we've had, that water temperature goes up and down like a yo-yo, and the fish's mood goes with it like a yo-yo. They can't quite work out, do I sit here and take it easy after my spawning a month or so ago? Do I get back on the feed properly? I start getting back on the feed, then the weather goes a bit funky, the water's cold at night, it's just like up and down. Once you're into May, it's a little bit steadier and they're back into that kind of what I call full feeding mode. But before then, this is the guy that's really going to be absolutely awesome. And the reason being, you'll probably notice there, I've put a little bit of lead wire. This is floating. Normally in our perch sizes, the 9 centimeter, 11 centimeter, they are perfectly suspending. This one is floating. It's designed to fish, obviously twitching it on the rod, getting it down and around there, but it's all about the pause. And don't be afraid to pause for a good few seconds on this bait. 5, 6, maybe even 8 seconds when they're just a bit tricky. So maybe you've had one of those days where you're thinking, I should have had a bite by now. I think I'm in the right areas. You get a little follow, you get a tiny little touch. You're just thinking to yourself, this isn't quite right. They're not quite on. Honestly, switch over to one of these and you will mostly likely get bites when it's on the pause after a good few seconds. So twitch, 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 pause, count for a few seconds. 1, 2, 3, and just slowing everything down and it hovering in front of their face is what's absolutely deadly about this type of bait. So yes, this is a floating one. When it's still a little bit tricky, just a little drop of lead wire, normally around the middle or the front treble, just make sure it balances in the water nicely. That absolutely suspends perfectly now. I know because I've caught loads of fish on this and I've trimmed that down perfectly. Once you get a little bit more into that May and they're feeding, it's still a fantastic bait, but I would take that lead off. Get it down, twitch it about, then let it float up, twitching it about and keep it moving most of the time. So that's number 2. And number 3 for me is going to be the Balties. Now, again, if you've got the back end of that April, one really good trick, and that's why I've pulled this colour bait out. This is called Baltic Pike. So a couple of things. One, something leery, so a bit of chartreuse or an orange belly, or like you can see here, I've got a bit of sort of yellowy green sides, orange belly. There is a time that you can really aggravate the fish. You can really, you won't get a real feeding response out of them, but you can get bites from kind of being in their face. So don't fish it too heavy. Definitely keep it light. Keep flicking it a lot of the time and then dropping and flicking a lot of the time. And more importantly, there are a lot of small jack pike around at this time of year. And I mean mouthful sized ones for the better fish. All right. Those pike definitely go around eating small pike at this time of year. So something that might resemble, that's why I've gone for this big size as well, 24 centimeters. But I wouldn't describe this late April, early May bit as a full feeding. If you get the weather conditions right, maybe they will. Maybe they'll come up on it and absolutely gob a big bait. But really, I think it's more about getting it in their territory, maybe looking like a small pike. And I think this is when post-spawn you get a lot of excitable jacks, but you're also, it's one of the few times of the year you're going to get jacks mixed in with your bigger fish still. All right. Once we come into the middle and the end of May, I've always said the last 2 weeks in May is probably the best pike fishing. you're ever going to get here in the UK. Might be slightly different if you're a bit cold in Wales or you're up in Scotland or around the rest of Europe. I'm not too certain. But for me, the last 2 weeks in May is when those post-spawn fish, they've spawned February, March, maybe beginning of April. The big ones tend to lay low for about a month or so. Then once you get into the middle to the end of May, oh my gosh, they are hungry. They're getting back on the feed, and you can have some of the best pike fishing of the year. So yeah, the Balties is going to be my selection. What I would tend to do, I like the big one to aggravate them when they're not actually feeding too well. They will come and snap at it. When thought I had one round here. Oh, here we go. The 18 centimetre version. That for me is absolutely killer. Can't get that colour anymore. It's called salted herring, I think that one's called. But yeah, the 18 centimetre size for me is much more when they start coming up on it. And again, like most of you guys know, I catch a load of huge pike on really tiny baits. But in that spring period, in those last few weeks of May in particular, they are going to come up on a nice chunky size bait. So a 16 or a 19 centimetre shad tease, an 18 centimetre Balties. If they're really going nuts, go up to the 24. But leave your small baits at home at the moment. Fish for those big ones. It will be aggressive. Water temperature's starting to come up, so it'll probably be about 14 degrees at the moment. And yeah, you're going to have some fantastic pike fishing in the month of May. So there you go, guys. Westin Swim, Westin Jerkbait, and the Balties is my pick for the top 3 baits of pike in the month of May.